We'll make a small swatch using this basic plaid pattern. As is true with most color patterns, it's better to use a chart to keep track of the colors and of the stitches. So we're going to use this little chart right here. The first step will be to make the knitted fabric, and to get that beautiful woven look, it's better to base the plaid on the reverse stockinette stitch. So we're gonna make a fabric with horizontal stripes, so we're gonna ignore the vertical stripes for now and make a piece in stockinette stitch using two colors and making the horizontal stripes as they are depicted on the chart. Every cell of the chart represents one stitch and one row, and they are also marked right here. So I did that already. So I have a piece of knitted fabric right here in stockinette stitch, and I have, let's take a look at both the chart and the piece, and I have 4 rows of the yellow, 2 rows of blue, 2 rows of yellow, blue, and the yellow again, and I bound off stitches. Before we move on to the next step, the actual step when we create plaid out of this piece of stockinette stitch, before we do that, it's very important to block the fabric, because we're gonna be stitching with running stitch that is not really stretchy or flexible. It is very important that the fabric itself is already blocked and it has the right stretch, the right tension. So I blocked this one already, and now I'm ready to move on to the embroidery part, to creating the plaid. Turn the piece so that you look at the purl side, because that's the side where we're gonna add embroidery, and we're gonna cut a piece of yarn that is long enough to complete at least one stripe. This swatch is pretty small, so I'm gonna use a piece of yarn that is enough to complete both stripes that are shown on the chart. How do I know the length? So the thing is that each of the stripes here, they are 2 stitches wide, as you can clearly see right here. And to make 1 stitch wide stripe, we would go back and forth. So to cut the yarn, we should make sure that the yarn is at least 4 times as long as 1 stripe. And because we're going to use yarn for 2 stripes, we will cut the yarn that is 8 times as long. And I have this piece over here. I've already measured it to save time. So what I did, basically I measured like this, 8 times. And I used a bit of extra yarn. See, I'm not measuring it like this because we would have 2 tails, and it's also good to have a bit of extra yarn to make sure we don't run out of yarn. So I have this piece already here, and I have my wool needle. So I thread this yarn into a wool needle, and we are good to go. You can start from any of the stripes. You can start working from right to left or from left to right, doesn't really matter at all. But I will start with the stripe that is on the right, because we knit from right to left, and it kind of seems like a good idea to start embroidery from right to left. So we'll start from this stripe over here. And from the chart, we see that this stripe starts 4 stitches away from the right edge of the swatch. So I'm taking my swatch and I look at it, and then I find the 5th stitch. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's the 5th stitch. That is the 5th one from the right side of the swatch. And that's where I would insert my wool needle. So I will go from bottom up under the upper curve that looks a lot like a mushroom. So I'll call it a mushroom just for the ease. I'll go from bottom up under this first mushroom. And then I will insert the needle, and you can do it in one shot. If your needle is really long, you can do it quite fast. Mine is not that long, so but still I can go under 3 stitches at a time. And I will go under every other mushroom in this column. So I will skip this one and then go under this one, and then skip one and go here, and then pull the yarn through, leaving a small tail. We will weave in this tail later on, so let it just hang there. And then we continue until we finish the whole length of this swatch. This one is small, so it's going to be fast. So I go here and then skip one and go here again and skip one, pull through and untangle the yarn. And we do it on and on until we come to the bind off edge. So these are my two last mushrooms in this column, and I also go through the bind off edge to anchor the yarn. That's it. We did half of the stripe. Now let's move, half of the one stitch stripe. Now let's turn the work and finish this part of the stripe. And to finish it off, I will put this one aside. We go again under the mushrooms that are right next to the mushrooms that we've already used. And we'll do it in a checkered pattern. So I will go under this one that is in between these two stitches. And then again I skip one and go here. Skip one and go here. And pull the yarn through. And then keep going until we get to the cast on edge again. And we get to the cast on edge, and I go through the cast on edge again to anchor the yarn. Okay, so it's almost there. My yarn gets tangled all the time for some reason. So here's what we've got. And when we look at the chart, this is the part that we've just finished. It is the first half of the first stripe. So we finished basically the part that is marked by one column of squares of cells on the chart. And now we need to do the second one to finish the first stripe. But before we do that, we remember that very important in this pattern is to keep the tension nice and smooth. So we don't want it to be jammed like this. See, that's no good, right? So before we move to the next part of the stripe, we would pull the swatch a bit. Not too much, because if you pull too much, then you will get those loops over here, and that's not nice. Just follow your instinct and make it nice. That's what we're gonna do, to make sure that we have enough yarn, because once we complete the stripes and the yarn is all woven in into the work, it will be harder to adjust the tension, especially if you're working on a bigger project, because this one is small, but normally you would probably work on a scarf or even a blanket. So be careful with the tension. And now that we made sure that we have enough yarn here to accommodate for a bit of a stretch. Of course it won't be stretchy, but just a bit of a stretch so the fabric looks relaxed and nice and highly textured. Now we can move on to the second part of the stripe, and we do it exactly the same way as we did the first part of the stripe. So we go for the next mushroom over here that is on the same level basically as the first one, and we go under every other mushroom on this side in this column of stitches. And one more time we go here, and we go through the bind of edge to anchor the yarn. Then we turn the work and find the mushrooms that are right next to those ones that we've just used, and they are in a checkered pattern right here. And one more time, here we go, the cast on edge, and we turn the work. Again, adjust the tension, always be mindful of the tension. Okay, the first stripe is done. Let's look at our chart. The first stripe is done, and we see that the next stripe is 2 stitches away from the first one. So if we start working just 2 stitches away, so that's going to be 1, 2, that's going to be this stitch, then when we pull the yarn through, we'll get this loop over here. That's not nice. And especially if you're using it for a scarf or a blanket that has open edges. To fix that, we would go through the cast on edge, keeping the yarn inside the fabric, not outside in an ugly loop, right? Like this. And then we count 2 stitches, 1, 2, and go under this third one over here. And then we do the same thing. Mushroom after mushroom, we are picking mushrooms over here, and then we pull the yarn through and do it again to the end of the row, of this column of stitches. Relax the fabric, go through the bind of edge, turn the work, find those mushrooms that are right next to the ones that we've just used, and make sure they are in checkered pattern, because that's what gives it this lovely woven look, and we want to keep it nice, right? And we do it again and again and again until we come to the cast on edge right over here. Turn the work, relax the fabric, and do it one more time. And here we are, the last stitches. Turn the work, and now we have beautiful stripes that look quite right. If we look at the chart, we placed them nicely and they're at the center of the pattern. And when you turn the work, you will see that the stripes, the vertical stripes, only show on the other side, and they're not visible right here. And that makes knitted plaid even more interesting, don't you think? If you find this tutorial helpful, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to be notified every time I publish a new video. Happy knitting, my friend. I'll talk to you in the next tutorial.